Behind the well-known Home Alone scream was a child who was stuck in hell. Even though he was only 10, Macaulay Culkin was worth $50 million. He just didn't know it. That's what his dad made sure of. The terrible truth comes out today. The mean things Kit Culkin did to his own son, the threats and abuse, and the sick reason he did it. This isn't another story about a child star. You will not be able to say anything about the father's treason. Macaulay Culkin was born on August 26, 1980. New York City's Manhattan. He had a big family, a small house, and never enough money. His family lived in a small apartment in Yorkville with 6 other kids. It was so small that they had to share bunk beds in one room. They lived in a small hallway with no doors. There was no privacy, but the confusion drew them together. Kit Culkin, his father, used to be an actress on stage before he got a job at a nearby church. Patricia Brentraw was his mother, and she worked as an agency. For Macaulay, that link to the showbiz world would change everything. It was hard to live. After a while, Macaulay talked about how he used to hide money under theater seats. A small but telling sign of how hard things were for his family. But there was something else going on in that crowded room. His dad used to want to be an actress, and now he saw a chance for his kids to do the same. It was Kit's belief that one of them would do well in show business. Before he was 5 years old, he was already acting in off-Broadway shows like Bach Babies and The Nutcracker with the New York City Ballet. The job as mom had also helped. There were people she knew at casting companies, and one director, Billy Hopkins, even paid for Macaulay to get to auditions. He had small parts in Rocket Gibraltar and See You in the Morning by the time he was 8. But when he was in Uncle Buck with John Candy in 1989, everything changed. The show. It was impossible to avoid him because of the way he looked, spoke, and behaved. That kid wasn't like any other talent. He was unique. Macaulay Culkin's life was never the same after he played Kevin McAllister in Home Alone. He was just another kid trying out for a movie role. He was the well-known kid actor in the whole world. The movie was directed by Chris Columbus and written by John Hughes. It was about a Christmas boy who got left behind and had to trick 2 thieves. It was smart, funny, and had just the right amount of heart. But Kevin was the only person who could make it all work. Franklin saw Culkin as the first kid who could play the part, but the director wasn't sure. He kept looking and tried out more than 200 other kids. The way they looked was different for each of them. Culkin had learned 2 whole scenes from the book by heart before his second audition. He did more than just say the lines. He changed his name to Kevin. That was it. The look was over. When Home Alone came out in theaters in 1990, it was a huge hit right away. People couldn't get enough of Kevin's crazy tricks and funny songs. The movie broke records by making over $285 million in the US alone. It also made Culkin a worldwide star. His picture was on lunchboxes, papers, and even posters. This way of thinking became golden in pop culture. A big reason why the movie worked so well was Culkin's act. Kevin became more than just a naughty kid because of him. He made him funny, brave, and easy to relate to. Both critics and crowds adored him. Hollywood also saw it. All of a sudden, every big movie company wanted him in their next big movie. After 2 years, Home Alone 2 got thrown out in New York. Go to movies. Kevin lost touch with his family again, but this time he had all of New York City to play in. The movie kept all the great things about the first one and added even bigger thrills. Funny times. Even though it didn't make as much as the first one, it was still a huge hit, making over $173 million just in the US. The sequel meant more to Culkin than just another big hit. It was a big step forward for money. He made a good amount of money as a kid actor in the first Home Alone movie, but $4.5 million for the second one. He was making $15 million by the time he was in Richie Rich in 1994. Her movie. He was one of the best-paid stars in Hollywood when he was only 14 years old. But success came with a lot of stress. Kit Culkin, his father, managed his business and pushed for bigger paychecks. It wasn't easy behind the scenes, though. Macaulay stopped acting around the middle of the 1990s. He had made enough money to live on forever, and the attention was getting to be too much for him. Home Alone never went away, even after he left Hollywood. Families all over the world watched to protect his home and trick the thieves. People watched the movie every Christmas season. Kids who watched it as kids showed it to their own kids. For many, it was more than just a movie. It was a part of their youth. Even after all these years, Home Alone is still one of the most loved movies ever. The silly comedy called The Clever Traps. It was a hit in part because of the touching story. But Macaulay Culkin was at the center of it all. He was Kevin McAllister, not just Kevin McAllister in the role. That little boy with the big smile will always remind people of the magic of Christmas, no matter how many years go by. In the early 1990s, Macaulay Culkin was everywhere. But as he got older, things began to change. He wanted to show that he wasn't just a naughty kid from Home Alone. It was something else he wanted. He did something in 1991 that was very different from anything else he had done. We didn't make my girl into a silly comic or an action movie. It made me feel. It was terrible. Culkin played Thomas J., a boy who was kind and weak and allergic to almost everything. His performance came from the heart. The movie did well. In the US, it made over $17 million. It wasn't just another hit, though. First time people saw him as more than just a funny kid. It was a big deal. Then in 1993, The Good Son came out and shocked everyone. Instead of playing a likable prankster, he turned into Henry Evans, a boy who didn't feel bad about what he did. People knew Macaulay Culkin better than this. There was something darker and more troubling about this. Some people felt uneasy around him because of his cold stare and disturbing calmness. It didn't matter what people thought about the movie. Culkin was a great actor. He wasn't scared to try new things. His dad, Kit Culkin, really wanted him to get this job and even said he would leave him lost in New York from Home Alone 2 if he didn't get it. It was a brave move that paid off. By 1994, Culkin was still getting big parts, but people weren't as excited about him. He played the lead role in Richie Rich, playing a kid with a big heart who is rich. The movie had a great idea, a well-known lead, and Culkin's own special brand of charm. But something wasn't there. There was no magic. The reviews weren't great or bad. Even though the movie did well at the box office, it wasn't as exciting as his earlier hits. People were clearly getting bored and moving on. Family movies didn't make sense in the mid-1990s. They were still loved. They were looking for more meaning and complexity. Culkin was having a rough time. He was still young, but not like the kid from Home Alone who had big eyes. Hollywood didn't know what to do with him as he grew up. Make a difference. They weren't total flops, but neither were they the big hits that everyone thought they would be. Suddenly, it wasn't so hard to get close to the world's biggest kid star. Then, when he was only 14, he did something that no one saw coming. He left. He made $8 million per movie, which made him one of the best-paid kid actors ever. But he wanted to leave. Since he was 4 years old, he had worked. He had only ever been in movies. Go to school, make friends, and be a normal kid. Mila Kunis and Macaulay Culkin began dating in May 2002. Both were young stars getting used to life in Hollywood at the time. Kunis was becoming well-known from that 1970s show, and Culkin was still known as the kid who lived alone. They kept their romance mostly secret, even though the media was watching. Kunis told people in 2007 that her and her boyfriend's life together was easy. Reading, video games, and movies were some of the things they did. She also said that Culkin made food every night and was a great cook. Things got harder over the years, though. Kunis lived in Los Angeles in 2006, while Culkin lived in New York. They were getting tired of the long journey. They chose to go their separate ways in early 2011. Kunis' agent said at the time that the breakup was friendly and that the two stayed friends. She said on a podcast that she handled the breakup badly and that she was terrible in her 20s. She regretted how things ended, but she saw that as a chance to move on. Kunis married Ashton Kutcher in 2015, and Culkin found love again with actress Brenda Song, even though their relationship ended. It was a big part of their lives and helped shape who they are now. Culkin met Song at a party hosted by Seth Green in 2014. They didn't start dating right away, but they did work together on Green's movie Changeland in 2017. As the movie went on, they became closer, and by October, they were seen together in public. They went to events together and held hands at Knott's Scary Farm. Many Hollywood couples talk a lot about their relationship, but they didn't, picking to keep things secret. They had their first child, a son named Dakota, in April 2021. He was named for Culkin's late sister. Carson was their second boy. He was born in December 2022. They didn't hire a nanny because Song's folks were willing to help. He called himself a homebody dad because he spent most of his time at home, while Song juggled work and being a mom. They got engaged before 2023, but they didn't rush to get married. They laughed about running away together, but they chose to wait so that Song's family could be there. Fans saw Song wearing a gold band when Culkin got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in December 2023. Some people thought they might have already gotten married, but they wouldn't say for sure. Their main goal is still to raise their kids. Culkin has always said nice things about Song. He told her once that he believed in her with all his heart. Big actions or getting a lot of attention aren't important to them in their relationship. It's about love, trust, and making a life together. A lot of people knew Macaulay Culkin as a kid star in Hollywood. In real life, though, his life was anything but glamorous. Kit Culkin, his father, was more than just his boss. He was in charge of everything. He told Macaulay what to do, took care of the money, and made him work nonstop. The people in charge in Hollywood couldn't stand him. That's all he did to get movies like The Good Son and The Nutcracker pushed back. People didn't know that his son didn't have much say in his own job. Macaulay didn't know how much money he was making for years. That's what his dad made sure of. He was worth about $50 million by the time he found out. That moment happened while his parents were fighting over who would have care of him. Kit had hidden newspapers from him so that he would never see the news stories about how successful he was. It wasn't just to keep him safe, it was also to keep him in check. Macaulay didn't want to do anything. That was not going to happen, his dad said. Kit had tried to become an actor, but failed. That was when Macaulay was 10 years old. He had already done better than his father ever had. Kit didn't look happy. She looked angry. Things went wrong in 1995. His parents fought in court over who would have care of their children. But this fight wasn't just about getting them up. It was about having power over Macaulay's job and money. His parents had been putting 15% of his salary into a trust and giving him the rest. That made me think of a tough question. Was it about money or parenting rights? Legal records showed Kip in a bad light. Patrick Macaulay's mother, Patricia, said he drank too much, was violent, and even left the family. Kip said it wasn't true. He said she was lying to get the case. However, Macaulay did not need a court to tell him the truth. He said that his dad was mean. Kit would say he would hit him if he didn't do a great job. Because he was bad, he was sometimes made to sleep on the couch. It wasn't just about being neat. It had to do with power. At school, Macaulay was one of the most well-known kids in the world, but at home, he had no say over his life. He finally made up his mind when he was 16. He stopped letting his parents handle his money. That was the first real step. He made progress toward getting his life back, but it cost him something. Kit wasn't involved with his kids at all by 1997. The person who used to be in charge of everything was gone all of a sudden. Macaulay couldn't get away from the stress of fame, even after his father died. He was caught in Oklahoma City in 2004 for having marijuana and prescription drugs on him. He was jailed for a short time and then given 3 one-year suspended prison terms. It was great for the press to make him look like another child star who had lost control. Then 2012 came along. Photos of Macaulay that made him look weak and messy spread reports that he was addicted to drugs. Some news outlets said he was spending thousands of dollars a month on heroin. He was even said to have nothing to live for in the National Enquirer and was about to die. But Macaulay fought back. Putting an end to the reports, he told The Guardian, "No, I wasn't pounding $6,000 a month on heroin." He was most upset about something other than the charges. It was how the media claimed to care about him while making money off of his problems. That was deception, he said. No, you're just trying to shift papers. Macaulay finally found peace despite everything. He quit Hollywood and changed his life so that it was less busy. He now mostly lives in France. He used to be defined by his fame, but now he tried to avoid it. When asked about his feelings toward fame, he said, "I don't just turn my back on fame. I actively don't want it." Also, Michael Jackson and Macaulay Culkin were friends, but this was a mystery for years. Some people thought it was strange. Some people thought it was even worse. When claims were made against Jackson, their friendship got a lot of attention. But Culkin never changed his mind, no matter what the news said. He stood up for Jackson while he was living and after he died, before Culkin testified in Jackson's 2005 trial. The man agreed to talk to Larry King. He told them about how they met. Jackson called him out of the blue, just as Home Alone was getting really good. They had met briefly before when Culkin was in the Nutcracker. They were having their first real talk. Culkin was different from other people Jackson met. He wasn't amazed by him. Even though he knew he was a big star, he wasn't a huge fan. He believed that was possibly the reason they got along. That guy didn't treat Jackson like a star. He dealt with him like any other person. Neither of them. Jackson was known and spent time with by the whole Culkin family. King asked about the real Neverland and what went on there. Culkin knew the right answer. Neverland was set up to be fun. As well as a movie theater and an amusement park, it had a whole arcade with computer games. Culkin said that most people didn't know what it meant when kids stayed in Jackson's room, but that made plenty of news. Jackson's bedroom was more than one room. It had 2 floors, several bedrooms, and enough room to feel like an apartment. A lot of people, not just Culkin, had slept there. Besides that, he knew why people didn't understand Jackson. Jackson had been famous all his life. He had a terrible youth and had been kept away from the real world for many years. He had trouble putting things into words, which made things worse some of the time. Culkin had a simple answer for King when he asked Jackson why he liked being around kids. Kids didn't care about being famous. What they did to him didn't change. His only goal was to hang out and play games. Jackson liked that because he was still a kid at heart in many ways. King then asked the most important question. What did Culkin think about the charges he made? Even though he said it was sad, something about it never made sense to him. Why would a parent settle for money if someone really hurt their child instead of making sure that person went to jail? He didn't agree with that. He thought that Jackson's first case was more about money than it was about the truth. Even though he didn't want to be a part of the trial's media circus, he was there for Jackson when he needed him. What Culkin said was very important. So they saw Jackson do something wrong with him in the early 1990s. A friend called Culkin that day and told him to turn on CNN to find out what was going on. He couldn't believe what he heard. It wasn't true at all. Making that clear to the jury, he said that he had never seen Jackson do anything bad to anyone. When Leaving Neverland came out years later, everyone was waiting to hear what Culkin had to say. Had always been. He talked about the accusations openly in an interview with Esquire in 2020. He didn't need to lie. That was the right time for him to say something if he had something to say. He didn't, though. He had never had anything bad happen to him or seen anyone else have anything bad happen. He also had a strange experience on a plane with star James Franco. Franco definitely wanted to get a response when he brought up the documentary. Culkin turned it off right away. He asked. Franco took a step back, and that was the end of the talk. Jackson's lawyer, Tom Mesereau, will always remember what Chris Tucker and Culkin did in court. People told both of them to stay out of it. Both of them ignored that advice. There was no way they were going to turn their backs on Jackson. They told Mesereau, my brother Macaulay, Kieran Culkin, has never trusted the news. He grew up reading lies in the media, so he knew not to believe them. Everything he read. Kit Culkin, their father, said that was true because Neverland was full of people of all ages. People from politics, show business, and families came and went. Former President Ronald Reagan and many other people had been there. How is it that none of these famous people ever noticed when something bad was going on? The news kept saying that Jackson's friendship with Culkin was strange, even after all of this. After years, articles kept coming out, and sometimes they had no real reason to. One person even used Brenda's song, Partner, which is about wishing Paris Jackson a happy birthday, as a reason to bring it up again. The media wouldn't let it go, but the people who were friends with him never thought the connection was strange. Macaulay Culkin didn't have big plans to come back to Hollywood. He wasn't trying to become famous or get back to the success he had as a child. He slowly got back into acting with smaller parts that gave him the chance to show new sides of himself. He didn't want to be known as just the kid from Home Alone. Around the middle of the 2000s, he began to choose parts that pushed him in new ways. He was in 2 lesser-known movies, Sex and Breakfast and The Wrong Guys for the Job, that were different from the child star roles he was known for. But Party Monster, which came out in 2003, was the movie that really changed his life. He played Michael Ehrlich, a real-life club producer who got involved with drugs, crime, and murder. Anyone who still thought of him as Kevin McAllister was shocked by the part. The movie went into the wild and dangerous world of the late 1980s New York club scene. The act by Culkin was intense and unsettling. It showed that he was good at what he did and ready to take risks. After that, he said saved. 2001 to 2004. It was a scary comedy that took place at a Christian high school. Roland Stockard, the kid he played, was sarcastic and bound to a wheelchair. He could see through people's lies. There was a sharp and funny way that the movie dealt with religion, morals, and identity. He showed he could handle difficult and unusual parts. It was another step in his transformation. Culkin did more than just work in movies. He had a guest part on Will and Grace. He was picky about the jobs he took, picking ones that interested him over ones that would make him famous again. He took care with his method. He was in charge of his job and making sure it went the way he wanted it to. He got more attention after a while when he was in American Horror Story, double feature. It was another scary and dark figure, demonstrating that he still had something unique after all these years. That moment led to a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2023, which was a surprise. It wasn't just something he did well in the past. He was praised for everything he had done, especially the brave decisions that made him stand out. He did more than just act, though. He had always been interested in different ways to be artistic, and the internet let him try new things without any limits. There are web shows and podcasts that mix comedy, satire, and pop culture to make bunny ears. What began as a podcast turned into a website and YouTube account as the project grew. He put weird and funny things on it, like fake self-help tips and weird reviews of products. He wasn't trying to be a well-known performer. Making the kind of material he liked was just for fun. That was one of the strangest things he's ever done. In 2012, he and some friends got together to make a parody band that covered Velvet Underground songs with words about pizza. He was aware that it was silly. Songs like All Pizza Parties and Take a Bite of the Wild Slice were both jokes and tributes, and the band got a cult following that no one saw coming. At live shows, they even gave away free pizza to the crowd. Some people really liked it. Some didn't. They were booed off the stage at one event in England. Culkin didn't care, though. The band was never meant to be taken seriously. It was just another strange and interesting test. It was over for the Pizza Underground by 2018. Still, it was one of the most surprising parts of his career. He found other ways to show himself besides acting and music. He wrote, painted, and thought about things outside of Hollywood. He had never been interested in being in the spotlight. He just kept going with whatever interested him at the time. He didn't try to keep his early fame like a lot of other child stars do. He got rid of it and made something new. Culkin once told me that he didn't care much about anything I did. That thought process shaped everything he did. Never did he try to make a return. He never did what was expected of him. He kept making things, trying new things, and having fun.